Hi, I'm Claire, and welcome back to Natural Word English. Before you do anything else, I want you to say one sentence out loud right now, even if you're sitting in a quiet room, even if someone might hear you. Say this: I speak better English than I think I do. Say it again, a little louder this time. Good. Now stay with me, because what you're about to learn in the next hour is going to change the way you hear English forever. Because here's the truth: nobody tells you when you start learning this language. The English you studied in your textbook, the English with perfect grammar and clean, tidy sentences, that is not the English real people actually speak. Real English is messier, faster, more emotional, and honestly, more interesting. And in this video, you are going to learn over 60 advanced English words and expressions, the kind that native speakers use every single day without even thinking about it. And you're going to learn them the way they actually appear inside real conversations, real emotions, real situations at work, with friends, with strangers, in moments of stress and moments of joy. This is not a list you memorize and forget. This is vocabulary you are going to feel in your body by the end of this lesson. Let me tell you exactly why this method works. And I promise this will take less than 90 seconds because I know you want to get straight into the content. When you learn a word by itself, just the word and its dictionary definition, your brain stores it in a tiny, isolated box, disconnected from everything else. That's why you can recognize a word on a vocabulary list, but completely freeze when you try to use it in a real conversation. But when you learn a word inside a situation, inside an emotion, inside a story, you can picture in your mind. Your brain stores that word together with the feeling, the moment, the people involved. And that connection is what makes the word come back to you naturally. Without translating, without hesitating, exactly when you need it. So today, every single word you learn will arrive inside a scene. You'll picture the place, you'll hear the conversation, and you'll repeat it out loud. That's the whole method. Simple, but powerful. One more thing before we begin. Throughout this lesson, I'm going to stop and ask you questions. When I do, I want you to actually answer out loud in English, even if your answer is short and imperfect. This is not a video where you just sit back and listen. This is a workout for your speaking muscles, so treat it that way. Ready? Let's get into our first real-life scene. Imagine this. It's Monday morning, and you walk into the kitchen, still half asleep. Your roommate is sitting at the table, staring at her phone with this strange expression on her face, somewhere between shocked and thrilled. You ask her what's going on, and she looks up and says, "I just found out. I got the job. I'm elated." Elated. This is a word you'll hear constantly from native speakers, and it's so much more powerful than just saying happy. Elated means extremely happy. So happy that the feeling is almost bursting out of you. The kind of happiness that makes you want to jump, laugh, call everyone you know. Instead of saying, "I'm happy about the news," a native speaker says, "I'm elated." Listen to the difference. "I'm happy I passed the test." Sounds fine, but "I'm elated that I passed the test" tells you this person is not just fine with the result, they are overflowing with joy. Now imagine your roommate continues the story. She says, "Honestly, I've been feeling so drained lately, working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, and this news just changed everything." Drained. This word describes being completely out of energy, physically or emotionally exhausted, like someone pulled all the energy out of your body the way water drains out of a sink. You don't need to be sick to feel drained. You just need to have given too much of yourself without resting. Try this sentence with me. "After that meeting, I felt completely drained." Say it out loud. Good. Let's build this into a real conversation now, because a word by itself is only half the lesson. Picture the kitchen scene continuing. Your roommate, let's call her Maya, is talking to you, and you respond. Maya says, "I can't believe it. I've been applying for months and almost gave up." You say, "That's amazing news, Maya. You definitely deserve it after everything you've been through." Maya says, "Thank you. Honestly, I was so drained from the whole process, I almost stopped believing it would happen." You say, "I get that completely. But look at you now. You're absolutely elated, and you should be." Maya says, "I am. I think I'm going to treat myself to a really nice dinner tonight to celebrate." You say, "You should. You've earned it." Now here's something I want you to notice. Did you catch how naturally elated and drained fit into completely normal everyday sentences? That's the goal. These aren't fancy academic words you save for essays. These are words real people use over coffee, in kitchens, in text messages to friends. Now, let's talk about how native speakers actually pronounce some of these words. When they speak quickly, because this is something almost no textbook teaches you properly. Listen to the phrase, "I'm elated that I got it," spoken slowly first. I am elated that I got it. Now listen to how a native speaker would actually say it in fast, natural conversation. "I'm elated I got it," where that almost completely disappears, and the words connect smoothly into each other like one long sound. This is called connected speech, and it happens constantly in real English. Try saying it both ways with me. Slow first. "I am elated that I got it." Now fast and connected. "I'm elated I got it." Feel the difference in your mouth? The fast version flows. It doesn't stop between each word. This is exactly why sometimes you understand every individual word in a sentence when you read it, but you can't understand the same sentence when a native speaker says it quickly. It's not that you don't know the words. It's that you're listening for gaps between words that simply aren't there in real speech. Let's move into our next scene because I want to introduce a completely different emotional situation. Picture this. You're at work and there's a tense meeting happening. Your manager just announced a major change to the project timeline. You get it. And one of your colleagues is clearly upset about it, but trying to stay professional. After the meeting, you catch up with this colleague in the hallway, and she says, "Honestly, I'm overwhelmed. This is the third change this month, and I don't know how we're supposed to keep up." Overwhelmed. This word describes a feeling of having too much to handle, too many tasks, too many emotions, too much information, all at once, like a wave crashing over you, and you can barely keep your head above water. It's different from just being busy. Busy means you have a lot to do. Overwhelmed means the amount feels impossible to manage, and it's affecting you emotionally, not just your schedule. A native speaker would rarely say, "I have too much work and I feel bad." Instead, they'd say, "I'm completely overwhelmed right now." Say that sentence out loud with me. I'm completely overwhelmed right now. Notice how much more precise and honestly how much more real that sounds. His colleague continues talking. She says, "And the worst part is, my manager seems completely indifferent to how stressed the team is. He just moves on to the next task like nothing happened." Indifferent. This is a fantastic upgrade word, and it's one that a lot of English learners never discover because it doesn't get taught in basic courses. Indifferent means not caring, having no interest or concern either way, neither positive nor negative, just nothing. It's a colder word than doesn't care, because it suggests a kind of emotional distance, almost like the person has decided not to feel anything about the situation. You could say, "He doesn't care, but he's completely indifferent to it," carries a sharper, more sophisticated edge. The kind of word you'd hear in a serious conversation between adults describing something that actually bothers them. Now, here's where we're going to practice something a little different. A technique called role switching. And I want you to really participate here because this is where real fluency starts to build. I'm going to read the line of one character in a conversation, and then I want you to respond as the other character, using your own words, before I give you an example response. Ready? Here's the scene. You're the colleague from the hallway conversation, and I'm your friend who's asking how work has been going. I'll say my line, then there will be a pause, and I want you to answer out loud as if you were really there. Then I'll give you an example of what you might say. Here we go. I say, "Hey, you look exhausted. How's work been treating you lately?" Now, pause the video for a moment, or just speak your answer right now, out loud, using words like overwhelmed, drained, or indifferent, if you can. Go ahead. Answer now. Okay, here's an example response you could have used. Honestly, I've been feeling really overwhelmed. There's just too much happening at once. and I'm completely drained by the end of every day. Notice how that response uses two of our new words naturally inside a real, believable sentence. If your answer was different, that's completely fine. The goal isn't to match my exact words. The goal is training your brain to reach for these words automatically when you need to express something. Nice work. That's real progress. And we've only just started. Let's shift into a slightly different area now, moving from emotions into personality, because this is one of the richest areas of advanced vocabulary in English. And it's an area where textbook English completely fails learners. Picture this scene. You're at a dinner party, and there's a woman at the table who says exactly what she thinks, no matter who's listening. Someone asks her opinion about a restaurant, and instead of being polite and vague, she says exactly what she thought. It's exactly what she thought, both the good and the bad parts, without softening it at all. Later, your friend leans over and whispers, "She's always so blunt." Blunt. This word describes someone who speaks directly and honestly, sometimes without much concern for how the words might affect the other person's feelings. It's not necessarily rude, but it's direct, sometimes uncomfortably direct. A blunt person doesn't sugarcoat things, meaning they don't make bad news sound nicer than it is. Compare this to another word, tactful. Someone tactful also tells the truth, but they choose their words carefully to avoid hurting anyone unnecessarily. So, you might say, "My boss is blunt. He tells you exactly what's wrong with your work," versus, "My mentor is tactful. She finds a kind way to point out my mistakes." Same honesty, completely different delivery, and completely different words to describe it. Let's continue the dinner party scene, because I want to build a longer conversation here, the kind you'll actually hear in real life, not the short, robotic dialogues you find in old-fashioned textbooks. Imagine the group is now talking about a mutual friend who wasn't at the dinner. One person says, "I don't know. I feel like Jake has become really aloof lately. He barely responds to messages anymore." Someone else adds, "I noticed that too. He used to be so open with everyone, and now he just seems distant." A third person says, "Maybe something's going on with him that we don't know about. I don't want to assume he's just being difficult." The first person replies, "You've..." That's fair. I guess I should just reach out directly instead of talking about it behind his back. Aloof. This word describes someone who seems emotionally distant, cool, and not very interested in connecting with others. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes just because that's their personality. It's a slightly negative word, but not as harsh as cold or rude. Someone aloof isn't attacking you. They're just keeping their distance. Notice something important in that conversation, too. Did you catch how the group moved from gossip into self-awareness, saying, "I don't want to assume"? and I should reach out directly. That's exactly how real adult conversations work. They're not just vocabulary delivery systems. They have emotional texture, hesitation, and change of direction. That's what makes them feel real. And that's exactly what we're building into every dialogue in this lesson. Let's add one more personality word to this same scene before we move forward. Imagine someone else at the table, a man who has strong opinions about everything, politics, movies, restaurants, and isn't shy about sharing them, sometimes even when nobody asked. Your friend describes him later as incredibly opinionated. Opinionated. This describes someone who has very strong views and expresses them frequently and confidently, sometimes to the point of being a bit much for other people. It's often used slightly critically, though not always negatively. Sometimes it's just an honest observation about someone's personality. You might say, "My uncle is so opinionated. Every family dinner turns into a debate." And everyone listening would immediately understand exactly the kind of persons you mean. Now let's slow down for just a moment, because I want you to actually absorb what we've covered so far before we keep building. Take a breath. In just the last few minutes, you've learned elated, drained, overwhelmed, indifferent, blunt, tactful, aloof, and opinionated. 8 advanced words, all delivered inside real emotional scenes you can actually picture and remember. That's not a random list. That's a small, powerful toolkit for describing people and feelings with precision. Nice work staying with me this far. Your brain is already doing more than you realize. Let's move now into the workplace, because professional English is one of the areas where advanced vocabulary makes the biggest difference in how confident and capable you sound. Picture this scene. You're in a team meeting, and your manager is explaining a big change happening in the company. She says, "We're planning a complete overhaul of our customer service process starting next month." Overhaul. This word means a complete change or renovation of something, not a small adjustment, but a total transformation from the ground up. You could overhaul a system, a process, even your own daily routine. It's a much stronger word than change. Saying "we're making some changes" sounds minor. Saying "we're doing a complete overhaul" tells everyone in the room that this is big, serious, and comprehensive. Your manager continues, "The goal is to streamline everything so customers get answers faster." Streamline. This means to make a process simpler, faster, and more efficient by removing unnecessary steps. Imagine a river flowing smoothly without rocks blocking the water. That's the image behind this word. Something moving cleanly without obstacles. A company might streamline its hiring process, streamline communication between departments, or streamline the way customers submit complaints. Someone in the meeting raises a concern. They say, I think the biggest bottleneck right now is actually our approval process, not the customer service side. Bottleneck. This is one of my favorite advanced words because the image is so clear once you understand it. Imagine a bottle, wide at the bottom, narrow at the top, and liquid trying to pour through that narrow part gets stuck, slows down, backs up. A bottleneck in a business, or in life generally, is the one point where everything slows down because too much is trying to pass through a limited space. Maybe the bottleneck at your job is waiting for one person's approval. Maybe the bottleneck in your English learning is your fear of speaking. Once you identify the bottleneck, you know exactly where to focus your energy. Your manager responds, "That's a fair point. We definitely need buy-in from the approval team before we can move forward with any of this." Buy-in. This phrase means agreement and genuine support from people involved in a decision, not just permission, but real commitment and belief in the plan. You can get funding for a project, but without buy-in from your team, the project often fails anyway because people aren't truly invested in making it succeed. A manager might say, "Before we launch this, I want to make sure we have buy-in from every department," meaning everyone genuinely agrees. This is the right move, not just tolerating it. Let's turn this workplace scene into a longer dialogue now, because I want you to hear how these words sound when real colleagues are actually problem-solving together, not just presenting information. Imagine two coworkers, Sarah and Daniel, talking after the meeting. Sarah says, "Honestly, I think this overhaul is going to be a nightmare to implement if we don't fix the bottleneck first." Daniel says, "I agree completely. We can streamline the customer service side all we want, but if approvals still take 5 days, nothing actually gets faster." Sarah says, "Exactly. And without buy-in from the approval team, they're just going to feel like this change is being forced on them." Daniel says, "Should we bring this up directly with management or wait to see how the rollout goes first?" Sarah says, "I think we should bring it up now. It's better to be upfront before we waste weeks on a plan that has an obvious flaw." Daniel says, "You're right. Let's draft an email today outlining the bottleneck issue specifically." Now pause here for a second. This conversation has 6 full lines of dialogue back and forth: natural hesitation, agreement, disagreement, and a decision at the end. Exactly the kind of extended, realistic conversation you'll actually encounter in real professional life. Not the short, artificial 2-line exchanges most courses give you. Let's practice one more pronunciation detail before we continue, because workplace English has a specific rhythm native speakers use to sound confident and clear. Listen to how stress falls on the important word in this sentence. "I think the biggest bottleneck right now is our approval process." Notice how bottleneck gets extra emphasis, extra volume, a slightly higher pitch, because it's the key piece of information in the sentence. Now try a sentence with different stress. We definitely need buy-in from the team. The stress falls on buy-in because that's the new, important idea. This is called sentence stress, and native speakers use it constantly, almost unconsciously, to guide the listener's attention to what matters most in a sentence. If you speak with flat, even stress on every word, your English can sound correct, but strangely robotic. Try this sentence with exaggerated stress on the key word. This process needs a complete overhaul. Say it with me, pushing extra energy into that one word. Good. That small habit alone will make your spoken English sound dramatically more natural. One more word from the workplace world before we shift scenes. Imagine a slightly different meeting later in the week where an employee is clearly unhappy but trying to stay professional. Your colleague describes this person afterward. He seemed really disgruntled about the new schedule changes. Disgruntled. This word describes someone who is annoyed, dissatisfied, and a little resentful, usually about something specific that's happened to them. Like a decision at work they disagree with. It's a wonderfully specific word because it doesn't just mean angry. It captures that particular flavor of quiet, simmering annoyance that shows up in someone's tone of voice and body language rather than an outburst. You might read a news article that says, "A scene in Ions, disgruntled employees have filed a complaint," and immediately understand the emotional temperature of that situation without needing anything else explained. Espalin Fade, you are doing genuinely excellent work so far. In this first section alone, you've absorbed 12 real, usable, advanced words: elated, drained, overwhelmed, indifferent, blunt, tactful, aloof, opinionated, overhaul, streamline, bottleneck, buy-in, and disgruntled. That's actually 13. If you're counting closely, all wrapped inside real emotional and professional situations. You can picture clearly in your mind. Take one more breath with me. Relax your shoulders for just a second. And get ready, because we're about to move into some of the most useful vocabulary in this entire lesson. The language of disagreement, opinions, the soft, and those slightly tense but completely normal conversations where people don't quite see eye to eye. Let's move into this next scene, because disagreement is one of those areas of English where learners often freeze completely, either staying silent or repeating the exact same 3 phrases over and over. I don't agree, and I think so too. Real native speakers have an entire spectrum of language for this, and today you're going to build that spectrum properly. Picture this. You're in a group chat with friends, planning a weekend trip, and there's a disagreement about where to go. One friend, Ben, insists on going to the mountains. Another friend, Lily, wants to go to the beach instead. Ben writes, "I'm adamant that the mountains are the better choice this time of year. The beach will be too crowded." Adamant. This word describes someone who refuses to change their mind. Someone completely firm and unwilling to be persuaded, even under pressure. It's stronger than just saying sure or certain. If you're certain, you believe something strongly. If you're adamant, you're actively resisting any attempt to convince you otherwise. You could say, she was adamant about not changing the plan, and everyone would understand this wasn't a soft preference. It was a hard line. Lily responds, I hear you, but I'm a little skeptical that the mountain cabins will even have availability this late. Did you check? Skeptical. This means having doubts, not fully believing something is true or will work out without necessarily rejecting it completely. A skeptical person isn't saying no. They're saying, I'm not convinced yet. Show me more. This word is incredibly useful in daily conversation because so much of adult life involves this exact feeling, cautious doubt rather than full rejection. You might say, I'm skeptical about this new diet trend, meaning you're not attacking it, you just haven't seen enough evidence to fully believe in it. Ben checks and admits, okay, you have a point. Availability is actually pretty limited right now. I'll concede that the beach might make more sense logistically. Concede. This is a beautiful word for real conversations because it captures something textbooks almost never teach: how to gracefully admit the other person is right without sounding weak or defeated. To concede a point means to acknowledge, often somewhat reluctantly, that the other person's argument has value, even if you don't fully agree with everything else they've said. It's different from just saying, you're right, because concedings suggest that there was real resistance before you accepted it. In a debate, in a work discussion, even in a friendly disagreement about weekend plans, saying, I'll concede that point, sounds mature, confident, and intelligent, exactly the tone advanced English speakers use. Lily replies, I appreciate that. And honestly, there's some nuance here too. We could technically do both if we shorten the trip. Nuance. This word describes a small, subtle detail or distinction that adds complexity or depth to a situation. Often something easy to miss if you're not paying close attention. When someone says, there's more nuance to this situation, they mean it's not simply black and white. There are shades of gray worth considering. This is an extremely sophisticated, commonly used word among educated native speakers, and using it correctly instantly elevates how advanced your English sounds. Now let's build this into a longer, extended dialogue, because I want you to hear the full rhythm of a real disagreement that resolves naturally, the way real friendships and real conversations actually work. Ben says, okay, so if we shorten the trip, we could do 2 days in the mountains and 2 days at the beach. What do you think? Lily says, honestly, that sounds a lot better than what either of us originally proposed. I was being a little stubborn about the beach. Ben says, And I was probably being a bit too rigid about the mountains, too. I just really wanted a break from crowds. Lily says, that's completely fair, and honestly, this compromise gives us both what we actually wanted. Ben says, agreed. Let's tell the group chat before someone else starts arguing about hotel prices. Lily says, good idea. This conversation was contentious enough already. Contentious. This describes something likely to cause disagreement or argument, a topic or situation that creates tension between people. You'll hear this word constantly in news and professional settings. A contentious debate, a contentious decision, a contentious topic at the dinner table. It's the perfect word for describing that slightly tense, high-energy feeling when people are passionately disagreeing but haven't necessarily become hostile yet. Now, here's your role-switching moment for this section. I'm going to play Ben, and you're going to respond as Lily, using at least one of our new words: adamant, skeptical, concede, nuance, or contentious. I'll set up the scene. Ben says, I really think we should just go with my original plan. I don't see why we need to compromise at all. Now it's your turn. Pause and speak your response out loud, playing Lily, disagreeing with Ben, but doing it the way a real, mature adult would. Go ahead now. Here's an example of what you might have said. I understand you feel strongly, but I'm a little skeptical that your plan considers everyone's preferences. There's some nuance here we shouldn't ignore. If your response sounded different, that's completely fine. What matters is that your brain reached for tools like skeptical or nuance instead of just repeating, I don't think so. That reach, that small mental stretch toward more precise language, is exactly what builds real fluency over time. Let's shift now into something a little lighter and more physical. Pronunciation. I want to teach you something about how native speakers handle disagreement in their voice, not just their words. When someone says, I'm adamant about this, listen to how the voice rises slightly on adamant and stays firm, almost flat, no uncertainty in the pitch. Compare that to skeptical, where the voice often has a slight upward lilt at the end, almost like a question. Even though it's a statement, because skepticism carries a natural tone of open uncertainty. Try saying both sentences with me, paying attention to your own voice. First, I'm adamant about this. Firm, flat, no rising pitch. Now, I'm a little skeptical about this, letting your voice rise gently at the very end. Can you feel the emotional difference in how your voice moves? That's not grammar, that's tone. And tone is often what separates someone who sounds fluent from someone who's technically correct, but sounds slightly flat and mechanical. Let's move into a completely different world now. Technology and daily digital life. Because this is an area absolutely full of advanced vocabulary that changes how naturally you can talk about your phone, your apps, your work software, all the small technical frustrations and conveniences of modern life. Picture this scene. You're on a video call with a coworker and suddenly the connection freezes. When it comes back, you say, or I say, "Sorry, I think there was a glitch. Could you repeat the last part?" Glitch. This word describes a small, temporary technical problem. A malfunction, usually minor and often unexplained. Your phone might glitch. An app might glitch. A video game might glitch. It's a wonderfully casual, extremely common word that native speakers use dozens of times a week without even thinking about it. Your coworker responds, "No problem." No problem. Honestly, the new update seems to have really smoothed things out, though. Everything feels so seamless now. Seamless. This describes something that flows perfectly without any visible breaks, problems, or interruptions. Like fabric with no seams, no rough edges where pieces are joined together. You'll hear this word used about technology constantly. A seamless user experience. Seamless integration between apps. But you'll also hear it used more broadly. The transition between the two managers was completely seamless, meaning it happened smoothly, without disruption. The coworker continues, ihapmaker, smoothly, and messays. Yeah, the new interface is so much more intuitive too. I barely needed to read any instructions. Intuitive. This describes something easy to understand and use naturally without needing detailed explanation because it matches how people naturally think or expect things to work. An intuitive app feels obvious to use. An intuitive design doesn't confuse you. This is one of the most valuable words in modern professional English. Modern professional English, especially if you work anywhere near technology, design, or user experience. You respond, "That's great to hear." Honestly, the old version was so clunky. I used to get frustrated just trying to find basic settings. Clunky. This word describes something awkward, heavy, poorly designed, or difficult to use smoothly, the exact opposite of seamless and intuitive. A clunky website is hard to navigate. A clunky sentence sounds awkward and unnatural when you read it out loud. A clunky piece of furniture is heavy and difficult to move. This word works far beyond just technology, too. You could describe someone's clunky attempt at an apology or a clunky transition in a movie script. Let's extend this into a longer, more natural dialogue, this time between two friends catching up about their week rather than coworkers. Picture Anna and Ryan meeting for coffee. Anna says, "Sorry, I'm a bit late. My banking app completely glitched this morning, and I had to restart my phone twice." Ryan says, "Ugh, I hate when that happens. Which app was it?" Anna says, "The one from my new bank, actually. It's honestly not very intuitive either. I still can't figure out how to set up automatic transfers." Ryan says, "Really? I switched to a different bank last year, and their app is so seamless, I barely think about it anymore." Anna says, "That's exactly what I want. Mine feels so clunky compared to what you're describing." Ryan says, "Send me the name of your bank later. I'll help you look at alternatives if you want." Anna says, That would be amazing. Thank you. Notice again how this conversation moves naturally between complaining, comparing, and offering genuine help, exactly how real friendships sound when people talk about the small annoyances of daily life. Here's a quick note on something native speakers do constantly that almost never appears in textbooks, describing things as tech-savvy or the opposite. If someone easily understands and uses new technology, you'd say, "She's really tech-savvy. She figured out that new software in about 5 minutes." Tech-savvy. And if someone struggles with technology, you might hear, "My grandfather isn't very tech-savvy. He still prefers writing letters by hand." This single compound word, tech-savvy, replaces an entire clumsy sentence, like good with using technology. And native speakers reach for it constantly. Let's slow down for a moment, just for the next 30 seconds or so, and take a short breather before we continue building. Close your eyes if you're somewhere safe to do that, or simply relax your shoulders and unclench your jaw if you're driving or walking. You've now learned words for emotions, for personality, for the workplace, for disagreement, and for technology, a genuinely wide range of real, practical vocabulary, all wrapped in real scenes, real people, and real conversations. This isn't a list anymore, sitting flat on a page. This is a small library of language living inside stories you can actually picture. That's a completely different kind of learning, and your brain is absorbing far more than you probably realize right now. Take one more breath, and when you're ready, let's continue into our next real-life scene, this time about something almost everyone experiences. Travel. Picture this. You've just landed in a country you've never visited before, and nothing about the airport signs makes sense to you. You call a friend back home and say, "Honestly, I'm completely disoriented right now. I don't even know which exit to take." Disoriented. This word describes the feeling of being confused about your surroundings, unsure of direction. Sometimes physically, sometimes mentally, like your normal sense of where am I and what's happening has been temporarily switched off. You could be disoriented after waking up from a nap in an unfamiliar place. Disoriented walking out of a long meeting into a completely different mental state. Or disoriented, like in our scene, stepping into a foreign airport for the first time. Your friend says, "That's normal. Don't stress. Just try to improvise until you find someone who can help." Improvise. This means to create or do something without detailed advanced preparation, using whatever resources or information you have available in the moment. It's a word used constantly in travel, in cooking, in music, in daily problem solving. The recipe called for an ingredient I didn't have, so I had to improvise. Or my flight got canceled, so we had to improvise a completely new plan. This word carries a slightly positive, resourceful energy. It's not about failing to prepare. It's about adapting cleverly in real time. You respond, "You're right. Actually, I met someone at baggage claim who's from here, and she's been really helpful pointing me in the right direction." Your friend laughs and says, "See, you're more resourceful than you think." Resourceful. This describes someone who's good at finding quick, clever solutions to problems, especially when resources or options are limited. Resourceful person doesn't panic. When something goes wrong, they figure it out using whatever's available, whether that's asking a stranger for directions, fixing something with random materials, or finding a creative workaround when the obvious solution isn't available. Let's continue this travel dialogue into a longer dialogue, imagining you eventually meet up with a friend who's traveling with you and you're comparing your first impressions of the country. You say, "Okay, I'll admit, the first hour here was rough. I felt completely disoriented and honestly a little anxious." Your friend says, "Same here. Actually, I think it's normal. It's called culture shock, and it usually fades after a day or two." Culture shock. This phrase describes the disorientation and discomfort someone feels when experiencing an unfamiliar culture for the first time. Different customs, different food, different social rules, all arriving at once and overwhelming your usual sense of normal. It's an extremely common phrase in travel and international contexts, and knowing it lets you describe an entire complex emotional experience in just 2 words. You respond, "That makes sense. I think once I stop trying to follow my normal itinerary exactly and just improvise a bit more, I'll relax." Itinerary. This word means a planned route or schedule for a journey, the list of places you'll visit and when. Your friend says, "Honestly, the best trips I've had were the ones where I threw away half my itinerary and just wandered instead." You say, "I love that idea. Let's be a little more resourceful today and see where the day takes us instead of following the plan exactly." This is another great example of a conversation with real texture, moving from anxiety to reassurance to a shared decision. Exactly how real travel conversations between friends actually unfold. Let's do one more phonetics moment here, because travel English involves a lot of quick, casual questions, and native speakers blend these together constantly. Listen to how "What are you doing today?" becomes, in fast natural speech, something closer to "Whatcha doing today?" Try it slowly first. What are you doing today? Now, fast and connected, the way you'd actually hear it from a native speaker on the street. Whatcha doing today? Similarly, do you want to often becomes "D'ya wanna" in casual speech. "D'ya wanna grab some food later?" This isn't slang you need to use yourself necessarily, but recognizing it is absolutely essential, because if you're only trained to hear the slow, textbook version, real conversations at cafes, airports, and street corners will sound like a completely different language to your ears. Try repeating both versions with me one more time. Do you want to get coffee? Slow and clear. Then, do ya want to get coffee? Fast and blended. Nice work. That's genuinely difficult listening training, and you just did it. Let's move into another block of vocabulary now, this time focused on how we describe communication itself, the word spy, to talk we use to talk about how people talk. Picture this scene. You're describing a friend's personality to someone who's never met her. You say, "She's incredibly candid. She'll tell you exactly what she's thinking, but somehow it never feels harsh." Candid. This word describes speaking in an open, honest, straightforward way without hiding your real thoughts or feelings. It's very similar to blunt, which we learned earlier, but candid carries a warmer, more positive connotation. A blunt person might make you feel a little uncomfortable with their directness. A candid person feels refreshing, trustworthy, real. You might say, "I appreciate how candid my doctor was about my treatment options," meaning she told you the full truth clearly, and you valued that honesty. The person you're talking to responds, "That's rare. A lot of people are so guarded. You never really know what they're actually thinking." Guarded. This describes someone who's cautious about revealing their true feelings or information, protecting themselves emotionally by keeping some distance, some walls up in conversation. It's not necessarily a negative trait. Sometimes people are guarded because they've been hurt before, or because a professional situation calls for some discretion. You might say, "He seemed a bit guarded when I asked about his past relationships," meaning he didn't fully open up. He kept part of himself protected. You continue the conversation, saying, "True, but I think there's a difference between being guarded and just being naturally self-effacing. My friend is actually really modest about her achievements. She rarely talks about herself unless you ask directly." Self-effacing. This wonderful word describes someone who's modest, who downplays their own accomplishments or importance, often to the point of not taking enough credit for their own success. A self-effacing person might respond to a huge compliment by saying, "Oh, it wasn't really a big deal," even when it clearly was. This is a slightly more literary, sophisticated word, the kind you'd hear in a thoughtful conversation among close friends, or in a well-written profile of someone interesting. Let's build one final extended dialogue for this section, combining several of today's words naturally, the way a real, flowing adult conversation actually layers vocabulary together without anyone even noticing how advanced the words are. Picture two friends, Sam and Priya, discussing a mutual friend named Alex over lunch. Sam says, "I've always found Alex a bit hard to read." Is he guarded, or is that just his personality? Priya says, Honestly, I think he's just naturally self-effacing. He's actually incredibly accomplished, but he never brings it up unless you specifically ask. Sam says, that's interesting because when he does talk, he's actually really candid. Remember when he told us exactly why he left his last job? Priya says, right. He wasn't blunt about it in a harsh way, but he was completely honest, even about his own mistakes. Sam says, I respect that a lot more than someone who's overly opinionated about everything, but never actually candid about their own flaws. Priya says, exactly. I think that combination, honest but humble, is actually pretty rare. Notice how this 6-line conversation naturally weaves together guarded, self-effacing, candid, blunt, and opinionated, 5 advanced words from across 2 different sections of today's lesson, all appearing organically inside one believable, flowing conversation between 2 friends who actually sound like real people. You are doing incredible work staying with me this deep into the lesson. Let's take one more short breather before we move into our next major section. Sanction, where we'll focus specifically on listening skills, shadowing technique, and how to actually train your ear and your mouth to work together the way a native speaker's does. Relax your jaw, roll your shoulders back gently, and take a slow breath in and out. You've now covered emotions, workplace vocabulary, disagreement, technology, travel, and communication styles. An enormous, genuinely advanced vocabulary base. And we're not even finished yet. Let's move into something different now, a section entirely dedicated to training your listening ear. Because vocabulary alone isn't enough if you can't actually catch these words when a real native speaker says them at full speed, in a real accent, in a real noisy environment. This next part is going to feel different from what we've done so far, so pay close attention. Let's talk properly about shadowing, because I've mentioned it a few times already, but I want to explain exactly what it means and why it's one of the most powerful techniques in the entire world of language learning. Shadowing is not the same as repeat after me. Repeat after me means you listen to a full sentence, then pause, then say it back. Shadowing is different and, honestly, more challenging because you're speaking almost at the exact same moment as the person you're listening to, like an echo following just a fraction of a second behind the original voice, not waiting for a pause at all. Imagine walking closely behind someone, matching their footsteps almost exactly. That's the image behind the word shadow. When you shadow English, your mouth is moving nearly simultaneously with the recording, forcing your brain to process rhythm, stress, and pronunciation in real time, rather than analyzing and then reproducing afterward. This trains something repeat after me simply can't train. Real-time processing speed, the exact skill that makes the difference between understanding English in your head and actually speaking it smoothly out loud. Let's practice this together right now with a short phrase. I'm going to say a sentence, and I want you to try speaking along with me almost immediately, not waiting until I finish, just jumping in right after the first word or two and trying to stay close behind my rhythm. Here's the sentence. I was completely overwhelmed, but somehow I managed to stay resourceful. Try shadowing that with me now, jumping in early and following my rhythm as closely as you can, even if you stumble. It's supposed to feel a little uncomfortable at first. That discomfort means your brain is actually working harder than usual, building new connections between hearing and speaking. Now let's talk about something equally important. Listening for gist instead of listening for every single word. This is one of the biggest mental shifts that separates intermediate English learners from truly advanced, confident speakers. Matt D. Dean. D. Dean. When native speakers talk quickly, especially in casual conversation, you are never going to catch every single word. And here's the secret nobody tells you. Native speakers don't catch every word either. Our brains are built to fill in small gaps using context, tone, and general meaning. If you try to translate and understand every single word in real time, you will always feel behind, always feel like you're drowning in the conversation. Instead, train yourself to catch the overall shape of what someone is saying and respond naturally, even if a few words slipped past you. If someone says something quickly and you only clearly caught the general idea, it is completely normal, completely fluent, and completely natural to respond with something like, I see, or that makes sense, or simply, right, rather than stopping the conversation to ask them to repeat every single sentence. These small responses buy you time, season. Show the other person you're engaged, and often the missing details become clear naturally as the conversation continues. Let's practice this specifically. I'm going to say a slightly fast, slightly complex sentence, and I don't want you to try to catch every word. I just want you to catch the general feeling and respond naturally. Here it is. Honestly, after the whole ordeal with the flight getting delayed and then the hotel losing our reservation, I was just relieved to finally get some sleep. Now, even if you didn't catch every single detail, you understood the general shape. Something difficult happened, and then relief came at the end. Practice responding naturally right now, out loud, with something like, I bet, or that sounds exhausting. The way a real native speaker would respond without needing every detail repeated. Let's add a few more connected speech patterns here, because this listening section is the perfect place to deepen your ear training even further. Listen to how going to almost always becomes gonna in casual native speech. I'm going to call her later becomes I'm gonna call her later. Similarly, want to becomes wanna. I want to try that new restaurant becomes I wanna try that new restaurant. And kind of often becomes kinda. I'm kind of tired becomes I'm kinda tired. These aren't mistakes. They aren't lazy English. They are simply how casual spoken English naturally flows. The same way formal, written English and casual spoken English are naturally different in every language in the world. Try these 3 transformations with me. First, slow and formal, then fast and natural. I am going to leave soon, then I'm gonna leave soon. Do you want to come with me? Then, d'ya wanna come with me? I am kind of nervous about this. Then, I'm kinda nervous about this. Feel how your mouth relaxes and the words blend together in the fast versions. That relaxed, connected quality is exactly what you're training your ear to recognize, and eventually, exactly what you'll start producing naturally yourself. Now let's move into a practice exercise. I promised you earlier, something you can genuinely take with you far beyond this video into your actual daily life. This is a self-practice technique using your senses, and it works like this. At any moment in your day, wherever you are right now, or wherever you happen to be later, pause and describe your surroundings out loud in English, using your senses, sight, sound, feeling, and try to use some of today's vocabulary naturally inside those descriptions. Let me model this for you first, so you understand exactly what I mean. Right now, if I looked around my own recording space, I might say something like this. There's a warm light coming through the window beside me. I can hear a quiet hum from my laptop. The room feels calm, though I'm honestly a little drained after talking for so long. My notes are a bit clunky and disorganized, but somehow I still feel completely elated to be sharing all of this with you. Notice how naturally elated, drained, and clunky slipped into a simple description of my physical space and my current feelings. This is the exact exercise I want you to try right now. Pause for a moment, look around wherever you are, and describe it out loud in English using at least 2 or 3 words from today's lesson. Don't worry about being perfect. The goal is activation, forcing your brain to search for and produce these words on your own without me feeding them to you first. Go ahead, try it now, out loud. Wonderful. That kind of self-generated practice, done for just 2 or 3 minutes a day, completely outside of any video or lesson, is genuinely one of the fastest ways to move vocabulary from I recognize this word into this word is now a natural part of how I express myself. I want you to try this exercise at least once today in a real moment of your life, not just during this video. Let's add one final vocabulary block now. A small but genuinely valuable set of words that native speakers use constantly to describe emotional reactions to unexpected situations. Because I don't want to end this lesson without giving you tools for those in-between feelings. not fully happy, not fully upset, just complicated. Picture this scene. You've been anxiously waiting for medical test results for a week, and finally, the doctor calls and tells you everything is completely fine. You hang up the phone and immediately feel your whole body relax. You text a friend. I just got my results back. Everything's fine. I'm so relieved. This describes the feeling of relief when worry, stress, or fear suddenly lifts because something turned out okay or a difficult situation finally ended. It's different from happy because relief specifically follows a period of anxiety or uncertainty. You wouldn't say you're relieved about good news you were never worried about in the first place. Relief requires that preceding tension. Your friend responds, I'm so glad. Honestly, I was pretty apprehensive for you all week. I didn't want to say anything and make you more nervous. Apprehensive. This word describes a mild anxiety or nervousness about something that might happen in the future. A quiet, uneasy feeling of concern without full-blown fear or panic. You might feel apprehensive before a job interview, apprehensive about a first date, apprehensive walking into an unfamiliar place. It's a softer, more sophisticated word than simply nervous or scared. You reply, thank you for not saying anything, honestly. If you had, I think I would have felt even more anxious. I appreciate you being sensitive about it. Your friend says, of course, and honestly, I would have felt a little resentful of myself if I'd made things worse for you during an already stressful week. Resentful. This word describes a bitter, lingering feeling of anger or unhappiness, usually because of something unfair, some mistreatment, or some regret about your own actions. You could feel resentful toward another person for something they did to you. Or, like in this example, resentful of yourself for something you feel you did wrong. It's a deeper, longer-lasting emotion than simple anger. Resentment tends to sit quietly in the background rather than exploding outward immediately. Now, let's do our final fluency round, and this is exactly what it sounds like. A fast-paced, energetic review of everything you've learned today, moving quickly through the words without stopping to explain them again. Because, by this point, your brain already knows them. Ready? Let's move quickly. Elated, drained, overwhelmed, indifferent, blunt, tactful, aloof, opinionated, overhaul, streamline, bottleneck, buy-in, disgruntled, adamant, skeptical, concede, nuance, contentious, glitch, seamless, intuitive, clunky, tech-savvy, disoriented, improvise, resourceful, culture shock, itinerary, candid, guarded, self-effacing, relieved, apprehensive, resentful. Say any three of those words out loud right now, in your own original sentence, as fast as you can, without stopping to think too carefully. Go ahead, right now, out loud. That's exactly the kind of quick, pressured retrieval that builds real, usable fluency, not the slow, careful, recall you get from flashcards. But the fast, instinctive reach for the right word under real conversational pressure. Here's your specific action for today, and I want you to actually do this. Not just nod along and forget it in 5 minutes. Go to the comment section right now while this feeling is still fresh and write one sentence. Just one. Using any word from today's lesson. It could be about your day, your mood, your work, anything at all, as long as it's your own original sentence. This single action does something powerful. It forces you to actively produce the word rather than passively recognize it, and it takes less than 30 seconds. I read every comment, and I promise you, seeing your own sentence typed out in public using real advanced English vocabulary is going to feel genuinely satisfying. You have done incredible work today. In this single lesson, you learned over 30 advanced English words and expressions, all inside real scenes, real conversations, and real emotional situations, not floating alone on a boring list. You practiced connected speech, sentence stress, and intonation. You practiced shadowing. You practiced listening for gist instead of panicking over individual words. You even practiced describing your own real environment using brand new vocabulary. This is not a small amount of progress. This is a genuinely significant step forward in how naturally and confidently you can express yourself in English. If this lesson helped you, subscribe to Natural Word English so you don't miss the next one, and I'll see you very soon for another deep dive into the kind of English real people actually speak. Take care of yourself. Keep practicing, even just a little every day, and I'll talk to you next time.